Welcome to the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting. Members of the public may watch the meeting live on oakville.ca or on the town's YouTube channel. Agenda and materials are available on oakville.ca under Town Hall Agendas and Meetings. We have 2 discussion items and 3 information items on the agenda today. The first matter of business is regrets.
Madam Chair, there are no regrets for today.
Thank you. The second item is any declarations of pecuniary interest. No? Okay. The third item is the confirmation of minutes from the previous meetings, from the previous meeting, the minutes from June 12th of 2025. Do I have an approval moved by?
So moved.
Thank you, Deborah. Approved that the minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting of June are approved. The next item is the election of chair and vice chair. Both positions will be available. Do we first have anyone that would like to self-appoint for the position of chair?
Can I just ask that all committee members please turn on their video if they are able to? Thank you.
Madam Chair, if no one else is interested, I will put my name forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah. Deborah will be appointed the chair position. And for the vice chair position, if anyone would...
Can we have a vote just on that?
Sure.
Please.
All in favor of Deborah taking the position of chair? Thank you. And now for the position of vice chair. Anyone would like to self-appoint?
If no one else is interested, I'll put my name forward.
Thank you, Karen. And we'll have a motion for approval of Karen taking the position of vice chair. All in favor? Thank you. The next item will be Kerr Village and Bronte Village Streetscape Studies Update. The presentation will be by Christina Tizard, the Manager of Urban Design Planning and Development.
Let's try it again. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me this afternoon to provide an update on the 2 studies that have been keeping us busy over the last little while. And I also want to mention that one of the urban designers who's taken the lead on many aspects of the file is with us today as well, Philip Weersma. So I'll be providing the presentation, or the update, rather. So the last time that I was speaking with this group related to the 2 studies was this time last year, almost to the day. And so we had gone through some consultation through the summer, and we were getting some great ideas coming forward, and with the intention of sort of finishing up the studies in the spring. However, they've extended through, and I'm pleased to note that by the end of this month, we will be bringing both studies forward to council. And so I'll get through that in the presentation. So the 2 study areas, we have Kerr Village and Bronte Village, and both of the aerials show the parameters or the boundaries in red of the areas that we had included within our study. I'm hoping, are they also showing on your screens? Okay, great. So this is, again, just an overview of the 2 study areas. Both are our traditional commercial Main Street districts and our growth areas within the town. And so to provide a bit of a project summary, so this is what's out there today. So on the left-hand side of the screen is a shot from standing not in the middle of Lakeshore Road, but Lakeshore Road in Bronte, just west of Bronte Road. The one on the right-hand side is from Kerr Street, and it's in and around the Heritage Square, so standing kind of in the middle of Kerr Street and looking north. And so through this, this study, we are transforming, we're envisioning of what these two streets can look like. And so on the right, we have Bronte, or Bronte Village on Lakeshore Road looking west. And on the right-hand side, Kerr Street looking north in and around where Heritage Square or Cowan Avenue is located. And so you'll probably notice, and you know what, I'm just gonna go back one slide to show, you know, the former or what's out there today, and then, you know, the proposal. And you'll probably notice that there's not a lot of changes. So unlike downtown, where we removed the center turning lane, or well, it was a turning lane, but it was used for vehicles, you know, parking, we were able to accommodate wider sidewalks and other treatments in the downtown. There were quite a few transportation transformations that were made within that district. Both in Bronte and in Kerr, there aren't as many transportation changes or big moves that are being made. For the Bronte district, and I'll show it in a moment, we are taking a look at the configuration of the intersection of Lakeshore and Bronte Road. There's some interesting angles that are happening there. And so I'll be able to show you some of those changes that are proposed. Really on Kerr Street, we're making changes between the building faces. So where the curbs are currently located, there won't be any changes to, you know, the number of car lanes. You know, where we can, we're going to sort of take back some of the sidewalk real estate from the large planters that are there. But they're more gentle and you know, not such involved changes that are being made. But the goal is, you know, to update, modernize, and bring the streets into a condition and that, you know, that meets all of our needs. And we'll be going through some of those changes. So the next couple of slides, I just wanted to bring back some of the guiding principles that we established very early on in the study process for both areas. And there's a little bit of a description here, but I just wanted to note that, you know, through all of the decision-making that was made, all of the consultation that we did with the public, we were using these guiding principles as sort of those touch points, so that any decision we'd go back and say, does this relate back to context-specific design? Does it relate back to accessibility, for example? So they were really ways for us to sort of wrap the studies and our decision-making up. So the first one is context-specific design. So, you know, each of these traditional commercial areas, whether it's downtown, Kerr, or Bronte, they each have their own character, whether that's because of the roads or the, you know, the buildings that are there, the mature landscaping or lack of landscaping. So we really want to look at the context and have the design reflect back, you know, to those specific areas. We want to create complete streets, and that's where we're accommodating a multimodal split, or being able to provide for pedestrians, cyclists, transit users, and motorists. We want to make sure that the streets, and by that I mean not only the travel portion, but the sidewalks are safe and they're comfortable for travel, that they're barrier-free. And again, accommodating all types of mobility and the social and recreational needs of all users. So we see the streets not only as connectors, corridors, but also places, and how we can really transform them into to foster what's happening within the commercial districts. Another guiding principle is accessible for all, and we're taking all of our cues from the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. We've also referenced the DOPS document, which is the Design of Public Spaces, and all of the other standards and guidelines associated with the built environment. And so our intent is to remove barriers, whether that's to buildings or public spaces, and of course the streetscape being that key public space, and making it easier for everyone to get around, whether they're going to work, travel, shop, or play. We also have focused on green infrastructure. So how can we, capitalize on the planting of trees, how we plant them, to ensure that we're capturing whether it's the rainwater that's coming in, making sure that we're really able to maximize the investment of this green infrastructure. We provide the right growing environments, and the trees and the plantings will provide us with the shade and the, CO2 caption and whatnot. So we're looking at various ways. Right now, a lot of our focus on green infrastructure are the tree plantings, but we're also looking at other sustainability matters, such as LED lighting in the street light standards and other technologies that can really advance the experience in the district. And finally, a vibrant and engaging public realm. And so streets will be designed with clear zones established. And if you don't recognize the image on the screen is actually downtown on Lakeshore before we did the streetscape. So this would have been where the former Starbucks was located. But what we want to do is establish zones of activities so that it's very clear what's happening in each of those. So for example, we have a building interface zone, and I'm kind of working backwards from the list. I apologize there. So it's that merchandising zone at the front of the buildings, and that's whether there's some cafe tables or bistro tables set out, merchandising, but that's really what's happening at the building face or closer to the shops and restaurants. Key is a consistent and predictable pedestrian clearway for all movement that's happening along the sidewalk. And the comparison between the image and what's out there today is we have now a minimum of a 2-meter wide, unobstructed, clear, predictable pedestrian path. And we're doing that same, taking that same approach within the 2 study areas in Bronte and Kerr. And then finally, we have the planting, lighting, and furnishing zone, which is closer to where the curb line is. So by establishing these clear zones, we know that there's not going to be conflict. We know that with that predictable, clear pedestrian clearway, that if the bistro tables start to move out to that, nope, they got to go back in. We know that there's not going to be lighting standards or benches that people have to navigate around. So it's kind of a place for everything and everything in its place. So those were the guiding principles that we established. And so I wanted to speak a little bit as well about public engagement. So throughout this process, we've had various opportunities to touch base with the community, the various voices, and I'm going to see if I can. Part of it's covering it up, but who we've heard from. So we've reached out. We heard from residents within each of the 2 districts. We've spoken with the property owners and the business owners in each of these districts. The BIA representation, so that's the Business Improvement Area Group, and their membership. We've also been involved in numerous conversations with the ward councillors and what they're hearing from their constituents. And then we had a variety of town staff representing various departments, also bringing their expertise as well as concerns or solutions to the table as we made our way through this process. So we had, for both districts, in and around the same time, but we had our first meeting where we were really presenting them, this is what we've seen, this is what we've observed, these are some of the opportunities and some of the ideas. And that was presented by the consultant in conjunction with the urban design staff. Shortly thereafter, we had a second meeting, and again, they were the meetings were really tailor-made to each of the districts, and that was showing them what we heard, how this could be accommodated into a streetscape design for the district. And we did have a third meeting just in Bronte. There were some challenges related to cycle lanes and the intersection, and there was also a request that came forward to convert a portion of Bronte Road to a one-way direction permanently as opposed to just for construction. So there were some more transportation-related issues that we really wanted to get out and have a conversation with the public. One of the great things that we did with this study, and it was brought forward by the consultant, was at the very outset, so you can see in the green bubble far on the left part of the screen that they held office hours, and so set aside half-hour time slots and put it out to the community. So if people couldn't come out to public meetings, or they had an idea that they maybe didn't want to share, but they were able to reach out and have that one-on-one conversation with the consulting team. And so that was a great success. It really got the ball rolling. So we hope to incorporate that in future public engagements. So what you see in the large bubble there is, from all of this meeting and from all of the work and from all of those different voices that we heard from, we, through the consultant, were able to create what we heard documents. So it's really a chronology of the comments. It's also, we had different worksheets at each of the different engagements, and so that was a way for the public to give us feedback, and whether it was a sketch or a note. And from that, we developed a public realm framework. And so it's showing how all the parts, whether it's related to the streetscape or not, but there's some great assets and amenities and opportunities within the districts as well as just on the periphery. So we were looking at ways to capture that through that public realm framework. And then from there, we focused in on the intent of the study, which was to develop streetscape design plans for each of the districts. And as I mentioned at the outset, we will be bringing the public realm framework and the streetscape design plans for Bronte and for Kerr later this month on the 22nd of September at the Planning and Development Council meeting. And through that exercise, we're asking Council to endorse the study findings and the study recommendations, and to have those recommendations apply to future capital works or for private development. And this is just an example of the public engagement. This was in Bronte, but you can see each of them started off with a presentation of what we were going through, and then on the left-hand side, you'll see some tabletop discussions and sort of working through the questions that we were posing to the public. And on the right-hand side, it's not intended to be legible, but it's just one of the worksheets. And you can see that this person kind of went in and they made some notes and drew some of their ideas. And so we collected from all the participants a variety of their feedback and comments and ideas. So we still have the two Streetscape Study Project websites are still active and will be through to the completion of the studies and beyond. And so if you're interested in seeing the what we heard and some of the presentation slide decks, the best way to find it, just going to oakville.ca. Under the search function there, right at the top of the page, just type in Kerr Streetscape or Bronte Streetscape. It'll give you one of those two or a series, and just click on that and you're right there on the project page. And it will be updated in the next day or so with the materials for the September 22nd when they're made public. And so we'll continue to update. And so I want to share with you some of the outcomes. So I mentioned the public realm framework, and that was really where we were taking a look and what are all the opportunities, what are the constraints, what do we have to work with? And really it was, again, identifying those opportunities and connections. Some of them have been incorporated into the streetscape plan, and some other ones we've identified as future considerations. They were kind of outside of the scope of the study, but we didn't want to lose the momentum and having those identified. So for example, we looked at the different or defining character areas within each of the districts. And I'll show you that on an upcoming slide. We were looking at the public green spaces and other open spaces within and surrounding. A street hierarchy, and what I mean by that is, and I'll use Bronte as the example. Lakeshore Road really is that commercial spine that goes through the district, whether, from Bronte Road all the way over to East Street. So we were looking at that hierarchy and how do we start designing for the different types of streets that we have within the district. We've really paid close attention to the existing and future pedestrian connections. Where are they going? Where do people want to link to? What are the desire lines? And making sure that in each case that they're accessible, they get you from one place to the next. You're not stranded, along a pathway. We also then looked at gateways, so those entrance points into the district, and commercial frontages. And so I'm mentioning these because on the next slide, here we go. So on the next slide, it's on the right-hand side, it's kind of a series of tiles. And again, it's showing each of those different elements that we looked at. And then the main graphic on the slide is showing how all of those layers are stacked together. So probably one of the more prominent aspects of this center document, center image, is the character areas. So we've identified in red the Main Street district. In yellow, there's several residential areas where we don't anticipate much change to occur. We also have, in Bronte, we've got the waterfront and the West Harbor areas identified. So, looking at those amenity spaces and how they can contribute to and be reflected in the streetscape study. So as an example. So then one of the other outcomes is the streetscape design plan. And that's really where we take those conceptual ideas of, that we explored through the public realm framework. And it's really getting into that concept plan of starting to place those various elements into the space that we have between the buildings or between the property lines. And so they illustrate where street trees and other landscaping material would be placed, where special paving, lighting, street furniture, wayfinding, public art, parking, and then the travel lanes. So sort of casting your mind to, a very similar approach to what we did when we tackled downtown Oakville and the streetscape. So it's, again, finding that place. Where does it make sense? Where are there conflicts? How do we eliminate those conflicts? And we really approach this with a hierarchy of pedestrians, cyclists, and then motorists as we were going through and making our decisions. And so on the right-hand side of the slide there, it's a typical cross-section for all segments of Kerr Street. And so in that particular instance there, it's, we're not saying this is a cut or a cross-section through a specific location, but it's typical. So as you can see in this particular instance, we followed those same principles of the zones of the streets or the boulevard or the streetscape. So closest to the buildings at the far edges is that storefront zone. Next to that is that pedestrian, that sidewalk zone, and it's unencumbered, it's clear, it's predictable, it's in the same place, it's not going to meander around different things. And then in the curb zone, or the furnishing zone is where the tree plantings would occur, where we have the light standards, where we would have benches and bins and different things like that. So again, it's that layering or the strata. And that's showing it in section view, as if you were walking up the street, you would see that. And then this is more or less the same, but shown in a plan view. And so as you can, I don't know if I can use if this is an active mouse. Oh, I think here we go. And I'm not sure if I can. Okay, yes. So this is showing it then in plan. So again, this is that streetscape zone, that interface zone up against where the buildings are located. And you can see down in this particular example, so this is between Stewart and Elmwood on Kerr Street. And so you can see that some of the buildings come right up to the property line and some are set back. And so, there's opportunities then to utilize the setback space for whether it's could be outside door marketing or patio space, et cetera. And then next, lining that parallel to that is, and this, I'm not doing this well, but it's the mouse. I'm going to blame it on that. But that is that clear way, that clear pedestrian path. And as you see, when it crosses onto Elmwood, to the north, and to Stewart on the south, it's continuous. So it's not jogging or shifting in and out. And then what we have sort of right at the roadside, here is some of the lay-by parking that we'll be accommodating. And then we've got trees planted in tree pits where they have the greatest success of survival and thriving. In some tighter areas, which I'm not showing on this drawing, but we have tree grates so that it provides a little bit more of a walking surface where we need that. And then, for example, in this location are the bus stops, the transit shelters. And so making sure that there's that predictability of where things can go and should go, and where people have that clear way. Move on, and I'll just show this example. Again, this is from Kerr Street, and it's further south. So what we have here is, this is Rebecca. And so Kerr, of course, we've shifted the orientation, but this is, on the far left is Rebecca, and on the far right is Lakeshore Road as it crosses Kerr Street. And I wanted to show this example because there's two existing buildings, here we go, right here on either side of John Street on the west side of Kerr Street, that we anticipate in the fullness of time, these will be redeveloped. But currently, there's some really strange grades that are happening between the sidewalk and the building frontage. This one, there's a little bit of space where on the private side where the ramping can be accommodated. However, on this one, it comes right up to the property line. So we're looking at, through this work, making sure that these businesses are fully accessible. And we anticipate then, when those sites get redeveloped at a future date, they will be accessible straight from grade. So the ramping and some of the landscaping will be removed because we now have the optimal condition. And there will be then opportunities for, I'm going to see if I can get my, here we go. Then there'll be opportunities to accommodate more tree plantings, and or lay-by parking. So we're looking at some of those interim or transitional pieces as well. But I really wanted to focus on this one because, throughout this whole process, we have been looking at, each of those areas where accessibility right now is a challenge, and how we can do it in an interim by providing the ramping, but then in the fullness of time, how that streetscape will look. And I think that's the end of my presentation. So I'm wondering if there's any questions from the group. And as I said, we're bringing this forward to Planning and Development Council on the 22nd, and it can be watched live or, of course, the recording after the fact. So I'll turn it back over.
Thank you, Christina. That was a great presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? Deborah? Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much. It was very interesting, and I certainly admire the work that you're doing. I am a longtime Bronte resident and connected there. So the one thing that I do hear from a lot of people is that there's not a lot of accessible parking. So as part of your study, were you looking at, I know you talked about accessibility, were you looking at sort of where to put accessible parking? The main concern that people have is that there wasn't a lot of accessible parking for like the shops and things that where they wanted to go in that. And the other thing that people have mentioned and that I've noticed myself is that the stores are usually pretty good with the accessible entrance, but there are a number of eating establishments there that are not accessible, or the accessibility is not I guess, showcase, like they would have maybe an accessible entrance, but it would be around the back or somewhere, but there's no sign at the front saying accessible entrance at the back. I have mentioned it to a number of places there, but I just wondered if that's something that could be considered. It's just the encouragement of stores and particularly the restaurants to think about the accessibility and showcasing their accessibility. I've mentioned it to them that it really would help their branding and just that they are accessible. And sorry for going on and on, but the only other thing was I noticed is that the demographics in Bronte, there are a number of senior residents, and there's like the Oscar building, which is the senior building. They're building there's Amica, they're building another Amica, so we do have that. And what I'm noticing is that sometimes they have the motorized carts for going up and down the street, and some of them don't know where, like kind of which lane to be in. Are they on the street? Are they on the sidewalk? They really don't want to be on the sidewalk because some of them do go quite fast. But then would there be confusion, or have you thought about the bike, when you put the bike lanes in, is there going to be sort of is it determined who goes in the bike lane? Because then the bike lanes are going to narrow the road a bit, so where are these motorized scooters? It's not a motorized wheelchair, it's the things they ride on, and there's not a lot, but there are certainly noticeable in the area.
No, absolutely. So I'll speak to, and I think because I was just so wrapped up in the work that we've been doing that I omitted to, or I forgot to mention that beyond the design plan that we're doing, we will then hand that work over to our transportation and engineering and their consulting team to establish the detailed design. And so a lot of the decisions about the where and the how, again, this is sort of that 30, 50,000 foot level looking down, but when we get into block by block or meter by meter, it'll be that group that will be doing that detailed design. So in terms of the locations for the barrier-free parking spaces on street, the locations as well as the how, the design, the construction details would be occurring at that particular point. And so we're taking a lot of our cues from what lessons learned from downtown. And so in downtown, my understanding is that we have the barrier-free on-street parking spaces at the beginning or at the ends of the blocks, and we have then some of it are barrier-free or some are quick stops. So we would most likely take that similar approach. But in terms of the number of those spaces and the locations, that will be determined at the time of detailed design. In terms of the motorized carts, and the question of where should they be, that's a great question. And it's not from, certainly from an urban design and what we were looking at, we've accommodated, sidewalks, cycle lanes, as well as, travel lanes. But where they should be, I can absolutely take that back to our transportation. Then we've got now the electric scooters or electric bikes, and so I think there's a lot of these motorized vehicles that are out there. So I mean, that's something that I can inquire with and provide that back to this group. And I think, Deborah, one of the also important messages was, some of the establishments are not accessible and some are, and how to showcase that. I would say that a lot of we see a lot of improvements when there's redevelopment occurring, because sometimes it's just very difficult to sort of accommodate barrier-free access in an existing building. And so, they make best efforts. But what I would suggest too there is that, and I've got a very good rapport with the BIA, the directors of the BIAs, and that's something that I'd be happy to bring to them, to say, to look at it almost as a district as opposed to maybe a one-on-one, but a district approach, and so that there may be something that could come out of that could be a good linkage maybe back to this committee. So I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
No problem.
Any further questions from the committee?
I do have a question. Hello.
Thank you, Nora.
Thank you for a great presentation. I do have a question. I noticed some of the streets currently will have one sidewalk, for example, accessible, and then in order for you to go to continue, you actually have to cross the street to the other side to have accessibility on the other side. And the last image you presented, because it does have a couple of non-developed buildings, it seems like this is going to be the case even with the development. Is that what it is? It seems I wasn't sure if there is the sidewalk continue on one side but not the other side, right?
Oh, in the last image, and I'm not sure if that could be placed back on screen. I think they're working. I see some stuff happening on the screen. Here we go. But yeah, so the second, yeah. So I'll just come back to that one. Okay. So and I'm gonna try this mouse one more time. So what I want, what I was. Oh, let me just go.
The one.
There we
Yeah,
go.
that
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this red dash line here is the property line. And so you can see this one is, the building is set back a bit from the property line, whereas this one is right against the property line. So what we're trying to accommodate, I think each one of them, there might be 2 steps to get into these establishments. So the sidewalk, that clear pedestrian pathway that I was showing in some of the other examples, continues all along here. And it just shifts, it just shifts out a little bit here. So if you were just walking from or making your way from Rebecca Street down to Lakeshore Road, you have that clear, predictable pathway that comes along there. What we've done here is so to provide access. So if you were looking to come to this establishment, through the work that we're doing, and this one it's shared partially on the private owner side and partially on town property, is that we're accommodating a ramp system to be able to provide access. To be able to provide access to the units within this building. It will, so it's a benefit to these, to both of these property owners and the business tenants that they have in there, but it will not impede in any way the, I'll see if I can get this going again here. It's temperamental. There we go. So the clear pedestrian way would continue along, just as it does on the east side of the street, if I can get it to come. So this would be that pedestrian path.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just wanted to-
Okay.
Thank you. I believe Nora also had a question.
I do. I just want to say thank you, Deborah. That was great to ask that question. For ourselves, my husband is quadriplegic and he drives in a huge wheelchair. He has to control it with his head, and it is very difficult. We try to take him for walks. He'll go for a walk, but he will get stuck trying to cross streets. Some of these wheelchairs, I notice that every time there's a picture of someone in a wheelchair, it's a manual chair. We have to start looking at other people, other types of these chairs, and we're not doing that. Every time I see it, it's just manual. A manual chair, for example, the picture you had, there was a man being pushed by a woman. It's a tilt on it, and you can usually put your foot on it and lift it up. With my husband, we could have an inch separating from the sidewalk to the road, and he will get stuck. Okay, so it's time we started looking at all the different types of chairs, not just manual, not just someone driving a small with one hand. Some people are able to drive it, but with spinal cord patients, some ALS patients, this is very difficult, and we're taking their independence away. A couple years ago, we had gone for a walk. He got stuck. Because of cracks in a sidewalk. We decided to go in the bike lanes. And we were actually told by the police department and the town. It is just for bikes. And we could have gotten a ticket for that. But that was the safest way for us to get home. So I think we really need to start looking at that. Thank you, Deborah. That was an amazing output that you just gave, and I really appreciate it. Nobody's looking at it. We don't live in the Kerr or Bronte area, but I think our voices need to be heard because we're going to travel there, and we have done that. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, sometimes we just can't get around. So we want to include everybody. We have to look at every possible thing that you can do. I know on Robinson, there's March of Dimes, those people in there with all the wheelchairs. You know, they're trying to get around. Mm-hmm. So please, can we look at those type of people and give them their independence? And that's it. I wanted to put that out for a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Can I ask for a move for approval of the presentation?
So moved.
Thank you, Karen. Moved that the report entitled Kerr Village and Bronte Village Streetscape Studies Update from the Planning and Development Department dated September 2nd, 2025 be received and carried. The next item is an information item, 5.1 from the Metrolinx Annual Survey on Accessibility.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. We can look at all the information items should you wish, and I'm happy to address any questions from the committee. The only item that does not have an attachment is the Metrolinx, which was distributed by email to the committee as the survey did close July 9th. So we wanted to ensure that was given to the committee in a timely manner, but I am happy to answer any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll move that the information items provided. If anyone would like to accept that, or no, we don't need to accept. No, we can just move. Yeah. Okay. We'll just, the above recommendations that have been approved by this committee will be presented to council through receipt of the meeting minutes. In accordance with the committee's term of reference, any advice or recommendations that require action or implementation by town staff must be approved by town council. And unless separated from the minutes by a motion from a council member, the recommendations are acknowledged as advice to council, but not deemed as formal directives to staff. We have one additional presentation, but Andrea would like to speak for a moment, so I'm going to pass it over to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge with the committee the recent passing of our past chair, David Underwood. His insights, his leadership, and his contributions to the committee really was incredibly valued and appreciated, and we do extend our sincere condolences to his family and his friends.
Thank you, Andrea. The next date and time of the next meeting is Thursday, December the 11th at 2025. And we move to adjourn tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Recording stopped.